Penguin Random House Audio presents The Unbroken Thread, Discovering the Wisdom of Tradition in an Age of Chaos. This is the author, Sohrab Ahmari. To Don Javier. To Rusty. To beloved Libo and Funchal. Do not free a camel from the burden of his hump. You may be freeing him from being a camel. G.K. Chesterton. Continuity is a human right. Charles DuPont White. A note on Scripture. Except where otherwise noted, all Scripture quotations are from the Revised Standard Version of the Bible, Second Catholic Edition, San Francisco, Ignatius Press, 2006. Introduction. An immigrant isn't supposed to complain about the society that gave him refuge. That is what I am, an immigrant, a radically assimilated one at that, who nevertheless harbors fundamental doubts about the society that assimilated him. I spent the first 13 years of my life in Iran, a nation many in the West associate with traditional backwardness, with black chadors and dour clerics, severe sexual mores, and teeming multitudes that fill the streets on Fridays to pray and to chant, God is great. As a boy growing up there, I had already absorbed this judgment and made it my own. I blamed all that ailed my native land, its repressiveness and the double thinking and double living it engendered, on our hidebound traditions. Once I immigrated to the United States, I reveled in the chance to remake myself anew each day. My moral opinions were as interchangeable as my clothing styles and musical tastes. I could pick up and drop this ideology or that. I could be a high school goth, a college socialist, a law school neoconservative. I could dabble in drugs and build an identity around my dabbling. I could get a girlfriend, cheat on her, dump her willy-nilly, and build a pseudo-identity around that, too. All along, it outraged me to recall that there were people still trapped in societies that didn't permit such experiments in individual self-definition. But lately, my mind has taken an unexpected turn. When I soberly examine the West as it really is, I find much wanting in its worldview and way of life. More than that, I have come to believe that the very modes of life and thinking that strike most people in the West as antiquated or limiting can liberate us, while the Western dream of autonomy and choice without limits is, in fact, a prison. That the quest to define ourselves on our own is a kind of El Dorado, driving to madness the many who seek after it. That for our best, highest selves to soar, other parts of us must be tied down, enclosed, limited, bound. These are the paradoxical arguments at the heart of this book. To explain why I believe in them so dearly, I need to tell you about two people, both of whom happen to be named Maximilian. The story of the first Maximilian begins in Poland before World War II and reaches its climax in 1941 at the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. Maximilian Kolbe, a resident of that camp, ranks today among the greatest of modern Christian martyrs. The Catholic Church recognized him as a saint in 1982. Each year, thousands of pilgrims flock to the Auschwitz punishment bunker, where the Nazis murdered him. Kolbe was born in 1894 to a poor, pious family in central Poland. As a boy, he had a vision in which the Virgin Mary visited him bearing two crowns. One crown was white, signifying purity, the other red, the color of martyrdom. The mother of Jesus asked young Kolbe which of the two he would prefer. I said that I would accept them both, he later recalled. That vision would serve as Kolbe's interior compass for the rest of his life, pointing his way to the two crowns. The crown of purity, or priestly chastity, was easier to obtain. After flirting for a time with a military career, Kolbe entered the Franciscan order as a novice at age 16, pouring himself into a life of rigorous study, prayer, and self-discipline. The year was 1910. Europe teetered at the precipice of a century of war and totalitarianism, though almost no one saw how close to the edge the continent had drawn. The Europe of the great empires appeared solid. Following doctoral studies in Rome and ordination as a priest, Kolbe returned to his homeland, head brimming with big plans. He started newspapers, a radio station, and a monastic community outside Warsaw called Niepokolanów, City of the Immaculate Mother of God. He campaigned against communist ideology, Freemasonry, and other forms of militant secularism and anti-clericalism then in vogue. In between, he went on missions to far-flung places, India, China, and Japan. He endured periodic bouts of tuberculosis, but the sickness couldn't put a stop to his various projects. The Nazis, however, succeeded where illness failed. In September 1939, the German war machine rolled into Poland from the west, while the Soviets invaded from the east. When the Luftwaffe bombed Warsaw, the printing presses at Niepokolanów temporarily ground to a halt. The Germans occupied the community, expelled most of its residents, and arrested Kolbe. "I do not know exactly what will happen in Poland," he warned his followers. "But we must expect the worst. There is no corner of this world that is without the cross. Let us not run away from it, and, if necessary, let us take it upon our shoulders for the sake of the Immaculate, that is, the Virgin Mary." By December, Kolbe regained his freedom and returned, undeterred, to Niepokolanów. He published anti-Nazi literature, broadcast the steady stream of anti-Nazi propaganda from his amateur radio station, and sheltered some 1,500 to 2,000 Jews in the monastery. On February 17, 1941, a Gestapo convoy entered Niepokolanów and arrested Kolbe again, this time for good. In May, the Nazis sent him to Auschwitz, shaved his head and beard. Father Maximilian Mary Kolbe became prisoner number 16670. The Red Crown was within his reach. At Auschwitz, Kolbe continued his ministry as if he were still free. He heard confessions, urging penitents not to give in to hatred. "Hate," he said, "is not creative." He gave alms to the poor, though now the poor were the other inmates, and the sustenance he gave them came from his own paltry rations. And he preached. "No, they will not kill our souls," the emaciated priest told a gathering of his Auschwitz parishioners, as one of them later recalled. "When we die, then we die pure and peaceful, resigned to God in our hearts." One night in July, a prisoner escaped from Kolbe's block. When the authorities discovered the escape, they alerted the camp's deputy commandant, Karl Fritsch, and he ordered the inmates to line up outside the block. Fritsch had a genius for cruelty. It was he who first had the idea of using Zyklon B gas to exterminate inmates, including the 1 million Jewish men, women, and children murdered at Auschwitz as part of the final solution. That night, Fritsch carried out his protocol for when inmates escaped, selecting 10 men to die of starvation as collective punishment for the one who went free. The priest in the bunch wasn't selected. But when he heard one of the condemned men cry out, "My wife, my children," Kolbe took off his cap and quietly stepped forward from the line. "What does this Polish pig want?" the deputy commandant asked. "I am a Catholic priest from Poland. I would like to take his place." Here, Kolbe pointed at his fellow prisoner. "Because he has a wife and children." Fritsch accepted Kolbe's offer. The Nazis stripped the 10 men naked and huddled them into a punishment bunker, where one of the worst forms of death known to humankind awaited them. Eyewitnesses later reported that Kolbe confronted his ordeal with calm, prayerful resolve. While the other men broke down, the priest was never heard to complain. Instead, he passed much of the time kneeling and saying the rosary. Days went by. Hunger and dehydration felled one after another. After 2 weeks, 6 of the 10 had died, and the sound of men begging for bread and water no longer emanated from the bunker. Of the 4 still alive, Kolbe was the only one still fully conscious when the camp authorities entered the bunker on August 14 to finish the job. When an executioner approached with a syringe full of carbolic acid, the priest said a prayer and offered his own arm. A camp worker later recalled seeing Kolbe after the injection, with his eyes open and his head drooping sideways. His face was calm and radiant. I was 31 years old, on the cusp of becoming a father and a Christian, when I first learned the story of Maximilian Kolbe. It floored me utterly. It wasn't the kind of a...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?